Northern Italy, April 1945. The Gothic line is collapsing. The Wehrmacht's 148th Division, a hardened unit of veteran soldiers, is retreating north toward the Po Valley. 1,500 men moving with purpose, discipline, and deadly intent. They've fought from France to the Eastern Front. They know how to survive. They know how to kill. And right now, they know exactly where they need to go. Standing between them and safety is a narrow corridor of rolling hills. 3 small villages strung along a ridgeline, Gaiano, Segalara, and Taligano. 4 kilometers of open ground. If the Germans can punch through here, they reach the Po River. They escape to fight another day. It's a simple equation of speed and firepower, but they don't know what's waiting for them. At the southern edge of that corridor, a Brazilian artillery captain, we'll call him Captain Silva, is about to orchestrate one of the most audacious tactical gambits of the Italian campaign. He has 6 howitzers, no infantry support waiting in position, no time to call for reinforcements, and 500 German soldiers bearing down on a ridgeline that, if lost, opens the entire sector. Most officers would retreat, establish a new defensive line, live to fight another day. Captain Silva doesn't retreat. Instead, he's going to turn 6 guns into a wall of steel. He's going to hold a 4-kilometer front with an artillery company designed to support attacks, not fight alone. And when the smoke clears, the 148th Division, a unit that has never surrendered, will do the unthinkable. This is the story of how one Brazilian officer's impossible gamble crushed an enemy retreat and forced an entire German division to surrender, not to overwhelming numbers, not to superior firepower, but to tactical brilliance, split-second timing, and the kind of calculated audacity that turns battles into legends. To understand how a Brazilian captain ended up commanding 6 howitzers in the mountains of Italy, you have to go back 3 years, to a moment when Brazil wasn't even in the war. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns. The United States Pacific Fleet lies shattered in Hawaiian waters. Japan has just kicked open the door to global war, and suddenly, neutrality becomes a luxury no nation can afford. Brazil, under President Getulio Vargas, has been playing a careful game. The country has sympathizers on both sides. In the barracks of the 11th Infantry Regiment, nearly 40% of the officers lean toward Germany. They've watched newsreels of Wehrmacht troops marching in perfect lockstep, the infamous goose step that projects power and discipline. Many Brazilian officers admire that military precision, but admiration curdles into alarm as Hitler's armies swallow Europe. Poland in a week, France in 6 weeks, the Balkans, then the drive toward Moscow. Roosevelt sees it clearly. If Europe falls, the Americas are next. In September 1942, the hemispheric dominoes begin to topple. The Havana Conference produces a declaration. An attack on any American nation is an attack on all. Brazil signs. Neutrality ends. And when Roosevelt visits Natal in 1943, meeting with Vargas, the deal is struck. Brazil will send troops to Europe, not observers, not token forces. A full infantry division, the Força Expedicionária Brasileira, the FEB, to fight alongside the Allies in Italy. Captain Silva, then still a lieutenant, is serving in the 11th Infantry when the mobilization begins. He's an athlete, a physical education instructor, fit and energetic at 28 years old. He catches the eye of General Costa, a hard-bitten commander who values initiative and physical courage. Costa watches Silva play basketball and volleyball in Belém, notes his competitive fire, his leadership on the court. When Costa is appointed to command the FEB's infantry, he personally requests Silva's transfer. "I need you in the regiment," Costa tells him. "We're going to war, but there's a problem. The Brazilian army is transitioning to modern warfare, and someone decides the infantry regiments need organic artillery support, companies of 105mm howitzers attached directly to the rifle battalions. It's a new concept. There are no trained officers for these hybrid units. Captain Silva has never seen a 105mm howitzer. He's an infantryman, but General Costa doesn't care about credentials. He cares about results. You're going to command the howitzer company, Costa tells him. You're going to learn, and we're going to win this war. So Silva does the only thing he can. He finds Colonel Carvalho, commander of an artillery battalion training near Rio, and essentially begs for a crash course. I don't know anything, Silva admits. I'm taking 6 guns to war and I don't know how to fire them. Carvalho assigns him to Captain Erickson, an artillery veteran. For weeks, Silva learns the brutal mathematics of indirect fire, range calculations, deflection corrections, observer techniques. He studies until he can visualize the arc of a shell from coordinates alone. His men train on borrowed guns, practicing loader drills until they can service a howitzer blind. It's not enough. It's never enough. But it's what they have. July 2nd, 1944. Captain Silva and his company board the USS General Mann. They're part of the first wave. 5,600 men crammed into a transport designed for 3,000. 1 meal a day because the galley can't keep up. Submarine drills every night. 16 days crossing the Atlantic, wondering if a torpedo will end their war before it begins. They reach Naples on July 18th. Mount Vesuvius looms in the distance, dormant but still smoking. The men camp at Agnano, near an extinct volcanic crater, and reality sets in. They're not training anymore. Every unit around them has the 1,000-yard stare of combat veterans. American, British, Polish, New Zealand forces rotate through the rest areas, and the contrast is stark. The Brazilians look clean, fresh, nervous. Everyone else looks haunted. The FEB still doesn't have its guns. Silva's howitzers are waiting at a depot. The men train with American units, learning to field strip the M1 Garand to maintain the 30 and 50 caliber machine guns. They absorb the hard lessons. Keep your head down, trust your training, watch for mines. But nothing prepares you for the real thing. September 15th, 1944. Midnight. Captain Silva's company moves into position near Vecchiano, relieving 2 American battalions. 300 meters behind the forward line, Silva places his 6 howitzers in a textbook artillery position. Good defilade, masked by terrain, with clear firing lanes to the north. This is it, the baptism. Lieutenant Neto takes the fire direction center. Lieutenant Santos moves to the forward observer position with Captain Tavares and the 2nd Rifle Company. Silva stays mobile, coordinating between the guns and the infantry. 800 meters to their left, another artillery battalion sets up. The Americans have handed over the sector and melted away into the night. Dawn breaks over Tuscany. The landscape is deceptively beautiful. Rolling hills, stone villages, olive groves. And somewhere out there, dug into those picturesque hills, the Wehrmacht is watching. Captain Tavares is aggressive, pushing his infantry forward to probe German positions at Bolzano and Massarosa. Silva moves with him, playing the role of forward observer, his radio linking him to Lieutenant Neto at the guns. When German fire erupts from Monte Comunale, 800 meters away, Silva calls it in. Seconds later, his howitzers answer. The gun line erupts, 6 tubes firing in sequence, the concussion rolling across the hills like thunder. High explosive shells arc toward the German positions. Silva adjusts fire, walking the rounds onto target. The Germans pull back. It's a small victory, almost routine, but it teaches Silva something crucial. His men are steady. They don't panic under fire. The weeks of frantic training have paid off. His infantry-trained gunners can fight. That lesson saves lives over the next months. The FEB pushes deeper into the Gothic line, that nightmarish chain of German fortifications stretching across Italy. Concrete bunkers, minefields, interlocking fields of fire. Every village is a fortress. Every hill is registered for German artillery. Silva's company fights through Bolzano, supports the assault on Massarosa. They fire harassment missions at night, interdiction missions during the day. The guns become an extension of the infantry, responding to calls for fire within minutes. Silva rotates his observers, keeping fresh eyes on the front lines. Then winter arrives, 18 degrees below zero. Snow piling up in the mountain passes. Men developing trench foot, frostbite, pneumonia. The war grinds to a crawl. Patrols venture out in white camouflage, probing for German positions, trying to bring back prisoners for intelligence. Sometimes the patrols don't come back at all. One day, a Brazilian patrol finds a crude wooden cross stuck in frozen ground. The inscription carved in German, "Here lie 3 brave Brazilians." 3 men from a recon patrol, caught by a German unit. They fought hand to hand when their ammunition ran out. The Germans killed them, then buried them with honors. Even in this frozen hell, there are moments of humanity. Silva's men endure. They share rations with Italian civilians who line up in the cold, hungry and desperate. The Brazilians give away their leftovers, children first, then women and the elderly. It's not much, but it matters. The company becomes tight-knit. Silva has staffed his unit with friends, relatives, former classmates from São Juan del Rey. His own brothers serve as sergeants. It's irregular, possibly against regulations, but it creates a bond stronger than military discipline. These men fight for each other. General Costa visits constantly, touring the front lines, even when German mortars are dropping. He's fearless to the point of recklessness, and his men love him for it. "You're afraid?" he barks at nervous staff officers. "They're not afraid," pointing to the rifle companies. "Why should you be?" On the Feast of the Flag, November 19th, Costa drives his jeep to every forward position, ignoring the danger, making sure his soldiers know he's with them. That kind of leadership creates devotion. And devotion, in war, creates miracles. Spring 1945. The ice breaks. The offensive begins. The Allied command has been planning this for months. A massive, coordinated push to shatter the Gothic line and drive into the Po Valley. If they can reach the Po River, they cut off German retreat routes. The Wehrmacht in Italy will be trapped. The FEB is assigned to IV Corps, U.S. Fifth Army. Their objective, Montese, a fortified mountain town that anchors the German defensive line. It's a nightmare objective. Steep approaches, prepared positions, overlapping fields of fire. The Germans have held it all winter. April 14th. The Brazilian infantry attacks. It's brutal. Close quarters fighting. Grenades and bayonets, house to house. The FEB takes Montese, then Montese Castle, then the surrounding hills. Monte Castello, Buffon, the entire complex. Silva's howitzers fire until the barrels glow. His gun crews work like machines, loading and firing in a rhythm born of endless repetition. Forward observers call in corrections. The shells land exactly where they're needed. But taking ground is one thing. Holding it is another. The Germans counterattack at dusk, the way they always do. Exploiting tired defenders, hitting weak points, trying to retake lost positions before the attackers can consolidate. At Castelnuovo di Garfagnana, a Brazilian company gets complacent after an easy victory. The Germans had put Italian troops in the front line, conscripts who surrendered immediately. 40 prisoners, no casualties. The Brazilians start celebrating. Then the real Germans attack. One lieutenant is inside a house when the assault comes. He panics, jumps through a window. German machine guns cut him down. His body lies in the snow for months, perfectly preserved in the cold. When they find him in May, he looks like he's sleeping. General Costa is furious. "Cowards," he roars. From top to bottom, all cowards. It's harsh, perhaps unfair. The unit was exhausted, inexperienced. But Costa doesn't tolerate complacency. This is the Gothic line. You relax, you die. The Brazilians retake the position the next day. The lesson is learned. By late April, the German line is cracking. The FEB pushes north toward the Po Valley, capturing Montese, then pushing toward Collecchio. The Wehrmacht is retreating. Still organized, still dangerous, but retreating. And that's when intelligence reports start coming in about the 148th Division, the 148th Grenadier Division. A veteran unit, blooded on multiple fronts. 1,500 men, well armed, disciplined, moving north through the chaos of the German withdrawal. They're not fleeing in panic. They're conducting a fighting retreat, trying to reach the Po River and establish a new defensive line. Their route takes them through a narrow corridor between Collecchio and the village of Fornovo. a stretch of rolling countryside dominated by three hill towns, Gaiano, Segalara, and Taligano. 4 kilometers of open ground. If the 148th reaches that corridor, they're through. They'll rejoin the main German forces and escape across the Po. Colonel Mello, commanding the 6th Infantry Regiment, sees the danger immediately. He calls Captain Silva into the command post. Maps are spread across the table. We've located approximately 500 Germans trying to cross through Gaiano, Segalara, and Taligano, Mello says, pointing to the map. They're from the 148th Division. The battalion is moving to intercept, but they need artillery support. He looks at Silva. Can your company get there first? Silva studies the map. 4 kilometers of front, 6 guns, no infantry in position yet. It's asking a lot, asking everything really. Artillery companies don't fight unsupported. They're supposed to set up behind friendly lines, provide fire support, stay protected. But Silva doesn't hesitate. We can do it. Captain Silva doesn't wait for orders to move. He grabs the operations map, calculates routes, and issues rapid-fire commands to his company. They're mounted in trucks and prime movers, the M4 tractors that tow the 105mm howitzers. Within 30 minutes, they're rolling north. The road to Segalara cuts through open farmland. German stragglers could be anywhere. But Silva pushes hard, because he understands something crucial. Whoever reaches those hills first controls the corridor. If the Germans get there, they'll have the high ground. His 6 guns will be shooting uphill at entrenched positions. If Silva gets there first, he can turn the hills into a killing field. His reconnaissance sergeant, his own brother, Sergeant Pinto, rides ahead in a jeep scouting positions. The lead elements reach the Gaiano-Segalara-Taligano ridgeline 50 minutes before the main German force. 50 minutes. It's barely enough time. Silva directs his gun crews to a position 500 meters south of Segalara, behind a low rise that provides defilade from the north. Perfect artillery ground, hidden from direct observation, but with clear fields of fire forward. The crews unlimber the howitzers, dig hasty positions, stack ammunition. Lieutenant Neto stays with the guns, running the fire direction center. Silva sends Lieutenant Santos forward to Segalara itself, to set up an observation post on the high ground. Santos climbs to the top of the hill, finds a position with a clear view north and raises Silva on the radio. Guns ready, Neto reports. I have eyes on the approach, Santos adds. No movement yet. Silva checks his watch. The battalion is still 20 minutes out. For now, it's just 6 howitzers and a handful of observers, holding a 4-kilometer front against 500 German soldiers. The odds are insane. If the Germans attack in force, Silva's company will be overrun in minutes. Artillery crews aren't infantry. They're armed with pistols and carbines, not rifles. In a close fight, they'll be slaughtered. But Silva isn't planning a close fight. 2 hours later, Captain Ericsson's artillery battalion arrives, setting up to the left of Silva's position. Now there are 10 guns covering the corridor. The odds improve. But the critical moment has passed. Silva got there first. He owns the ridgeline. At 14:30 hours, Lieutenant Santos's voice crackles over the radio. Movement. North side. Multiple columns. Silva grabs binoculars, moves to higher ground. In the distance, maybe 2,000 meters out, he can see them. German infantry in march formation, moving south with purpose. They're not panicking, not running. They're advancing tactically, using terrain, keeping dispersed. 500 men. At least a reinforced battalion, possibly more. And they're heading straight for Segalara. Range? Silva asks Santos. 2,000 meters in closing. Silva does the math in his head. The Germans will reach the base of the ridgeline in 10 minutes. Once they start climbing, they'll spot the Brazilian guns. Then it becomes a race. Can Silva's howitzers break their attack before they close to assault range? He makes the call. Prepare for fire mission. High explosive. Area target. I want a wall of steel in front of Segalara. Neto relays the orders. The gun crews load. 6 breaches slam shut. Fire. The first salvo screams downrange. Silva watches the fall of shot. 6 black flowers of dirt and smoke erupting across the German line of approach. Too far. He adjusts. Drop 200, fire for effect. The howitzers settle into a rhythm. Every 8 seconds, another salvo. 36 shells per minute hammering the approaches to Segalara. Silva walks the fire back and forth, creating an interdiction zone, a curtain of high explosive that no infantry can cross. The Germans try anyway. Through his binoculars, Silva watches them attempt to maneuver. Squads breaking left and right, trying to flank the impact zone. Officers rallying their men. These are professionals, veterans who've survived the Eastern Front. They're not going to break easily, but they're also not going to get through. Every time a German unit tries to advance, Silva drops shells on them. He shifts fire rapidly, catching formations in the open, forcing them to ground. The Germans dig in, trying to wait out the barrage. But Silva doesn't let up. He has plenty of ammunition. He'd stockpiled extra when an American unit left supplies behind weeks earlier. His brother, Sergeant Pinto, had made 20 truck runs to haul it all back. Now that foresight pays off. For 2 hours, Silva's 6 guns dominate the battlefield. The German advance grinds to a halt. They can't retreat. They'd be moving away from their objective, exposing themselves to Allied air power and armored units sweeping in from the flanks. They can't stay in place. Silva will just keep pounding them, and they can't advance through the artillery barrage. They're trapped. At 16:45, the 1st Battalion arrives, Major Gross with 3 rifle companies. Finally, Silva has infantry support. Captain Diaz takes his company forward to secure Segalara itself. Captain Silva moves with him, acting as forward observer, coordinating fire support. But just as the Brazilians are consolidating their hold on the ridgeline, disaster strikes. Captain Diaz, after completing his reconnaissance of Segalara, starts driving back to report to Major Gross. But instead of taking the road that curves safely behind the Brazilian lines, Diaz continues straight, directly toward the German positions. The military police haven't set up traffic control. There are no guards at the intersection. Silva hears the explosion from half a kilometer away. Diaz's jeep has hit an anti-tank mine. The captain is badly wounded, bleeding from shrapnel wounds. Brazilian medics sprint forward under fire, drag him to safety, stabilize him. It's a stark reminder, this is still a battlefield. One wrong turn, one moment of inattention, and you're dead. But the German attack has failed. As darkness falls, the Wehrmacht troops dig in north of Segalara, trapped between the Brazilian artillery and the closing Allied pincers. They're not going anywhere. And then, something extraordinary happens. The next morning, white flags appear on the German positions. Colonel Mello receives the initial report with skepticism. German units don't surrender easily, especially not veteran divisions, but the flags keep appearing. By mid-morning, a German officer, a major, walks forward under a flag of truce requesting to speak with the Brazilian commander. Mello meets him on the ridgeline. The German is precise, formal. "We wish to discuss terms," he says in accented English. Mello keeps his face neutral. Inwardly, he's calculating fast. The German force is trapped, yes, but they're not encircled. Not completely. They could fight their way east or west, take heavy casualties, but break through. They're choosing not to. Why? The major explains. "We are the 148th Grenadier Division. We have fought honorably, but we are cut off from our main forces. We cannot reach the Po River. We request to surrender to American or Brazilian forces, not to the Soviets." That's it. The Germans have heard the rumors. Soviet forces are pushing into Austria. The SS and Wehrmacht both know what happens to prisoners taken by the Red Army. Better to surrender to the Western Allies. But the major adds something else. "We will only surrender if we are guaranteed humane treatment. We will surrender to you, to the Brazilians, because we trust you." It's an astonishing statement. The Wehrmacht respects the FEB. Over 8 months of fighting, the Brazilians have earned a reputation, tough in combat but honorable. They don't execute prisoners. They follow the Geneva Conventions. In a war filled with atrocities, the FEB has remained disciplined. Colonel Mello makes his play. He doesn't correct the German major's assumption that the division is completely surrounded. Let the Germans believe they're encircled. Let them think resistance is futile. Unconditional surrender, Mello says. No negotiations. The major returns to his lines. 2 hours later, he's back. We accept. What follows is unprecedented. The entire 148th Division, 1,500 men, marches into captivity. Not fleeing, not in disorder. They come in formation, singing war songs, maintaining discipline. As they approach the Brazilian lines, they snap into the goose step, that rigid high-stepping march that once terrorized Europe. Captain Silva watches them pass. They're surrendering, but they carry themselves like victors, heads high, rifles slung, marching in perfect rhythm. It's surreal. The Brazilian soldiers, many of them barely out of their teens, stare in shock. Some feel pity. One private hands a German soldier a chocolate bar. Another shares cigarettes. These are supposed to be the enemy, the monsters who started a war that killed millions. But up close, they just look like tired men. The Germans stack their weapons at a collection point Silva has established by the roadside. Rifles, machine guns, Panzerfausts. The pile grows into a small mountain of steel. The prisoners are marched to a holding area, guarded by Brazilian infantry. By evening, it's done. The 148th Division has ceased to exist as a fighting force. General Costa arrives the next day to inspect the surrender site. He finds Silva supervising the final prisoner processing. Costa grips Silva's shoulder. You held them, Costa says simply. 6 guns against a division. You held them. It's the highest praise Silva will ever receive. The capture of the 148th Division sends shockwaves through 5th Army headquarters. General Mark Clark, the 5th Army commander, personally commends the FEB. An entire German division surrendering without a major battle? It's a propaganda coup as much as a military victory. But for Silva and his men, it's something else. Validation. For 8 months, they've fought alongside American, British, and Polish units. They've endured skepticism, condescension, the unspoken question, can the Brazilians really fight? Segalara answers that question. The FEB continues operations through April. The Po Valley falls. German resistance collapses. On May 2, 1945, German forces in Italy surrender unconditionally. The war in Europe is over. Captain Silva's company has fired over 15,000 rounds in 8 months of combat. They've supported every major FEB offensive. They've lost men to German counter-battery fire, to mines, to the random cruelty of war. But they've never failed a fire mission. Not once. In June, the FEB begins preparing to return to Brazil. They gather at a camp near Naples, Francolese, in the sweltering summer heat. The contrast with the winter fighting is jarring. Men who shivered in foxholes at 18 below zero now sweat in barracks under Mediterranean sun. On July 6, 1945, Captain Silva boards a transport ship for the voyage home. General Costa appoints him as the ship's military police chief, a mark of trust. Silva maintains discipline during the 2-week crossing, then watches from the deck as Rio de Janeiro appears on the horizon. The harbor is packed. Tens of thousands of people line the docks, waving Brazilian flags, cheering themselves hoarse. The FEB is coming home. The parade through Rio de Janeiro is chaos. The troops form up at Praça Mauá, march down Avenida Rio Branco. But the crowd is too thick, too excited. Civilians push through the formations, hugging soldiers, crying, shouting. The parade dissolves into a citywide celebration. Captain Silva, marching with his men, feels the weight of it. They left as an experiment, South America's first contribution to a European war in a century. They return as veterans, blooded and proven. 25,000 Brazilians served in Italy. 451 died in combat. Thousands more were wounded. But they held the line. In the years that follow, Silva rises through the ranks. He commands training battalions, passing on the lessons learned in Italian hills to a new generation. He retires as a general, decorated with the Combat Cross, the Campaign Medal, the War Medal. But when people ask him about the war, and they always ask, he doesn't talk about medals. He talks about his men, the brothers and friends who served 6 guns in impossible conditions, the soldiers who held Segalara against 500 Germans, the gunners who fired until their hands blistered and their ears rang, and never once failed their infantry. He talks about the wooden cross in the frozen ground. Here lie 3 brave Brazilians, enemy words, but true ones. And he talks about the German major who said his division would only surrender to the Brazilians because they were worthy of trust. That, General Silva believes, is the real victory, not the battles won or divisions captured. But the proof, written in blood and mud and artillery fire, that Brazilian soldiers could stand with any army in the world. 6 howitzers stopped the 148th Division, but what really crushed that retreat wasn't the guns. It was the men behind them, the crew chiefs and loaders, the observers and drivers. The captain who got there first held the ridgeline and refused to give an inch. 50 minutes made the difference between victory and disaster. 50 minutes, 6 guns, and the kind of tactical audacity that turns impossible odds into military legend. The enemy retreat was crushed, and the world learned. Never underestimate the Brazilians.